Chapter 9. Bloodless. The past? Maybe. Earth? Definitely not. Declan felt the flat of a sword smack across the length of his bare back. Pain, sharp and stinging, radiated up to the top of his head and down to the tips of his toes. The second smack against his naked chest had his breath leaving his body. The 3 quick blows to his thighs, and then a fourth against his left calf, nearly caused him to fall to his knees. It was only then that he moved, or rather, had a chance to move. He backflipped out of range of the sword, sweeping up 2 wicked curved daggers that lay in the black sand, before he landed in a cat-like crouch. He rose up on the balls of his feet with the 2 daggers ready to fend off the next blows from his opponent, a white-haired elf with skin so black it was almost blue. The elf had volcanic red eyes and wore light chitin armor stained a dark purple. The armor hugged his powerful frame, a section of it jutted up from his chest plate to cover his neck. So it is harder to cut his throat or sever his head from his body. Declan knew, or remembered, or something. "Oh, now you want to fight?" The elf let out a harsh, grating laugh at the end of saying this. Declan wanted to ask who this elf was. Were they enemies? They must be enemies. Deep in his heart, he hated this man, despite not knowing who he was. And the man's red eyes reflected that hatred back at him. Where were they? This place of velvety black shadows and stars. No, not stars, but glowing lichen spread out above their heads. He could hear the slap of water against rock from somewhere to his left, and there was the whir of wings cutting the air somewhere out of sight. A sheer black wall rose up behind him, cut open by a massive iron gate that was firmly shut, as if to stop him from escaping. Why were they there? To kill each other. To end something. Of that, he was sure. But when was this? It was not now, because he was smaller than he should have been, 1.5 feet shorter at least, and his arms were reed slender, though still muscled. He looked like a child. Was this a memory, then? It seemed so real. He could feel the sand shifting beneath his strappy sandals. He ached with the pain of those blows, and earlier ones he could not recall at that moment. He sensed a whole life behind him that he did not remember. So if this was not now, what was now? He also couldn't remember another now. But there was one, he was sure of that, some place and some time far from here for which he was grateful. A life with light and laughter, love and friendship, a place that was not this endless, cold dark where he was alone. Despite having all these huge questions that needed answering, he found himself growling at the white-haired elf. "I'm always ready to fight." "Fight what?" the elf demanded. Declan's jaw tightened. His teeth ground together. "You," he spat out. "Always ready to fight you." Those red eyes glowed sulphurously, and Declan added, "Master Volray." The honorific was demanded, even though both of them knew he didn't mean it. While this elf was clearly more skilled than he was, to be someone's master meant that there was a desire to teach as well as to learn, and he knew in his bones that Volray did not want to teach him. Master Volray, Volray, Volray Voltorus. The name floated in front of his mind. More information poured in. Master of the Venomthorn Academy and Blood Knight to Lady Ashrin Zinzadoral. This was gibberish to him, and yet it was not. He felt the emotions behind these words as if they meant something very much to him, especially Lady Ashrin. While his hate for Volray was like a brand on his skin, his love for her was just as strong. But then the elf, Master Volray evidently, was speaking again, dragging him out of his thoughts. "Always ready, are you? Well, I am sorry, but it is too late," Volray hissed, shaking his long white braid back over his shoulders. Declan felt a similar length of hair brush against his right shoulder. He looked down at it. "White? My hair is white? That's not right. I've never had white hair, have I?" Volray spat out, "Those blows you were supposedly ready for would have severed your spine, had your intestines spilling onto your feet, not to mention that your legs would be cut out from under you. So you see, you are already dead. The fight is over." Declan's cheeks burned with the humiliation of his failure. His mind offered up every excuse he could think of, including the largest one, which was that despite his words to the contrary, he hadn't been ready, because what had he been doing? It was bright, so bright, burning, awful, acid poured over my skin, bones on fire, I couldn't move, and then another light, so much brighter. Him. Was that the real now? But if it was, it could not have affected this fight. But as fast as those thoughts occurred to Declan, they were gone, especially who this him was. There was only the faintest memory of eyes so blue that they couldn't be real. Blue as the clearest sunlit skies. But that too made no sense. He had never seen the sky where the sun burned. Velvety darkness surrounded him where he crouched in the soft black sand of the Selinar, the training circle. That's what this was, the training circle at the Venom Thorn. And in the sconces that surrounded the circle were lumen stones that crackled and flared, giving off. Let me do that again. And in the sconces that surrounded the circle were lumen stones that crackled and flared, giving off purple and gold light. He'd heard that there were worlds where stars bathed everything in golden light. But I've never seen sunlight. Yet he knew he had, or would, or the thoughts fled like water down a drain. Lady Ashrin took you in, gave you a place here, even though you were abandoned by your own parents. We feed, clothe, and train you, but what do you give us in return? Nothing. You are weak. You are useless at magic. You are nothing, Volray snarled. Every word Volray said was like a blow to Declan's heart. He felt like he was being staked to the ground, bleeding out. It's true. I'm nothing. Even the awakening has passed me by. Again, nonsense concepts to him, but he felt the grief of them. He was weighed down by them like anchors tied to his ankles in the ocean. It was a mistake to accept you. All you do is bring danger to this place, Volray shouted. His head shot up. Danger? And for a moment, Volray froze, as if what he'd said was a mistake. Volray rarely made mistakes. Declan knew that much. But the elf's volcanic hatred of him had perhaps opened his lips too much. One who cannot protect themselves is a burden on all others who can. We must put ourselves at risk to keep you alive, and you will never be a blood knight to one of the great families, so your upkeep will drain our coffers dry. Volray spat. But while those things might be true in this bastard's mind, that wasn't what he had meant. Declan was sure of that. What danger do I bring? Declan demanded to know. I told you, I know when you lie. Declan interrupted, his eyes narrowing at the elf. Volray jerked back as if Declan had physically struck him. "How dare you speak to me like that, Jadir?" Jadir, orphan, bastard, of no blood, bloodless. That's what it means. The greatest insult one can use against another, his mind whispered. "I speak to you in the way you deserve." Declan glowered at him. Volray again was stunned, as if physically struck by Declan's words, and he knew he was insulting the elf at the same level Volray had insulted him. Volray was the master. He was Jadir. But he did not care. He would not give honor where it wasn't due, even if it killed him. Declan felt a wild desire for Volray to strike him down. He was Jadir. That's what he would always be. Better to die on the point of Volray's blade than disappoint and be a burden to Lady Ashrin. Yet another part of him seethed. I will not die. I will kill him, and we will see who is bloodless. That part of him that was cold and dark whispered, "Let go." "Let go," he frowned. "Of what?" His inner voice did not answer. "You will be turned out," Volray shouted. "I will tell Lady Ashrin. You ran away. Ungrateful wretch that you are." "No!" The thought of Lady Ashrin thinking he had left her, scorning her generosity and kindness, felt like acid on his soul. "You think you can beat me, Jadir?" Volray taunted as he lightly spun his sword in one hand. "Even if I do not use any magic against you, you will die at the end of my blade in a moment." "No magic. I have no magic. Even if I can defeat him with my sword, he will use his power against me, and I will be done," Declan knew. "Let go," the voice in his head urged again. "Of what?" he asked back once more. "You have no family. You have no name. You are a sputtering spark in the darkness, and when I snuff you out, no one will even notice." Volray laughed. No family. For a moment, Declan remembered a woman bleeding out against some cabinets, and there was another woman before that, but he couldn't quite see her, couldn't quite. No name. He could not for the life of him remember his name. "I am Jadir. I am nothing." Except he wasn't nothing. He was still here, still alive, and there would be a future, a future. He just had to get there. "Let go," the voice demanded. Something cold bloomed in his chest. He put a hand over his heart. For a moment he remembered, or knew, or something, that the other novices at the Venom Thorn had claimed to feel something similar when they awakened, when their magic found them, claimed them. Except they didn't feel cold. They felt heat. The cold spread, icing him over, and with it, the pain, the fear, the grief, numbed, and they seemed to disappear altogether. He was ice. He was darkness. He was ready to let go. "You missed one. I am also dead," Declan whispered, repeating the line Volray had said earlier. "You forgot that. You killed me already, remember?" Volray's red eyes narrowed in confusion, but then he grinned, a slash of a smile on dark lips. "Yes, and you are dead. How could I forget that?" "One shouldn't forget the dead," Declan found himself saying, "for they have nothing left to lose." And for a moment, Volray looked surprised. Whether at his words or tone, it was unclear. "Danger. I bring danger to you? No. I am dangerous to you," Declan thought. But then Volray grunted and nodded, gesturing with the sword for Declan to attack him. Declan relished all of this in his deep freeze. And that's the end of part 1. This is Night Prince Chapter 9, Part 2. Unlike Volray, Declan had no armor. He wore a thin piece of silk around his loins and those strappy sandals on his feet. Plus, the sword gave Volray a lot more reach than his simple daggers. So Declan would have to be quick, move in and out before Volray could strike. The sword the elf wielded was thin and black, nearly 3.5 feet long and only an inch wide. Strangely, it didn't shine like weapons made of metal usually did. In fact, it seemed to draw in the feeble illumination in this place and snuff it out. But it was more deadly than any blade he carried. Declan's shoulders shifted as he remembered the smack of that sword against his bare skin. He knew welts were rising from where he'd been hit. If he looked down at his bare thighs and calves, he would see similar raised and reddened flesh. These wounds would swell even more and eventually burst before crusting over. It could have been worse, his mind whispered. He could have cut me, and the Drugo poison would have had me vomiting my guts out. But the pain was nothing. Because he was ice, he was dead. Declan darted towards Volray. The wind was like a caress on his frosted skin. The sword struck out like an adder, but he effortlessly twisted out of its way. Sand exploded where he had been as the sword clove the ground in two. Declan dove forwards. He struck the outside of the elf's right leg with one dagger, slicing through the chitin and cutting into the flesh beneath. Volray gave out a sharp, hissed cry of surprise and pain. Declan had drawn blood from Volray for the first time, and he was not done. He turned his body so that he was rolling behind Volray. The sand rose on either side of him like a tidal wave as he slid. He stabbed at the armor's weak points behind Volray's knees. The first dagger sank into Volray's left leg. He twisted it, feeling both the armor and the tip snap. But Volray's shout of pain made it worth the loss of the full blade. The dagger in his other hand went for the right knee, but Volray reached down and grabbed him by his braid. Declan did not yell, even as the elf yanked him up and around. The broken dagger went flying out of his hand, but he did not let go of the other one. He held on for dear life or dear death. Time seemed to slow. Volray wrenched him around until Declan was in front of him. He held Declan above the ground by the braid. The pull on his scalp should have been agonizing, but the unearthly chill remained, deadening him to all pain and fear. Besides, Volray had given him an advantage. Declan wrapped his legs around the elf's waist and dragged that bigger body towards his own. Volray hadn't expected him to do this, so he didn't resist at first. Another mistake. 2 mistakes in one fight. 2 mistakes too many, the voice inside of Declan gloated. Then he swept down towards the elf's throat with his dagger, sliding it behind the guard and against his soft skin. Let go, the voice urged. Volray's red eyes locked onto Declan's. Dead. Again. Declan wanted to say, yes, you are, but not again, first time. But then he felt the flat of Volray's blade slap against his ribs. Volray could have stabbed him in the heart. He still could. Kill him, the voice told him. Don't wait. He will cut you in half. Yes, dead, Jadir, Volray hissed. His volcanic eyes glowed hotly, and a smile lifted the corners of his mouth. Let go. Let go. Let go. Declan let out a laugh, sharp and bitter, that had Volray growling, but he didn't care. I may be dead, but so are you. He pushed the sharp edge of his dagger against Volray's unprotected throat. Volray grunted. The smile was gone. They stared at one another in silence, and the wheels in each of their heads turned. In Declan's, he knew that to kill Volray, well, where would that lead? He would lose his place at the Venom Thorn. Lady Asherin would never forgive him. The other teachers and novices would hunt him down. He would not only be Jadir, but truly dead, forever dead, with no one and nothing, not even this little speck of life. For Volray, the loss would be less certain, Declan thought. He doubted that Lady Asherin would believe he ran away, and her powers would have allowed her to find him or his body if Volray took his life. And though he was Jadir, for some reason, Lady Asherin didn't treat him as such. So, two dead men. How very typical for our people. A female voice rose up behind Declan. Victory in defeat. Declan twisted his head around to see her, but Volray chose that moment to drop him. Declan just managed to land on his feet, but it took all of his strength to rise up and turn to see her. His heart was thumping hard in his chest, not from the exertion of the fight, but because of her. Lady Asherin, Volray said, his voice so different when he spoke to her compared to when he did to Declan. Almost reverent, no sneer. The moment that Declan laid eyes on her, he felt a welling of warmth. She was dear to him. For a moment, another face flashed before his mind's eye. The woman crumpled before some cabinets, bleeding out. He shook the thought away, even as his chest went tight. He dropped to one knee and bowed his head, the same as Volray was doing. She was as tall as the other elf, but not quite as broad, though her sleeveless black dress showed muscled, pale arms. Her tall black boots stirred the sand as she walked into the training circle with them. Her white hair hung down past her waist. It was braided tightly across the top of her skull, but was loose otherwise in long, glorious waves. Her red eyes glowed like witchfire, but the skin around them was crinkled into what almost looked like a smile. Rise, Asherin said with a touch of amusement in her voice. Volray, you're bleeding. Declan glanced over at Volray, who was getting up more stiffly than he normally did. Blood trailed down the outside of his armor. There was likely far more pooling in his boot. For a moment, Declan imagined he tasted that hot blood on his tongue. He swallowed thickly. He'd bested Volray. But we're both dead, he reminded himself. Does it matter? I still won. You did not let go. The voice sounded disgusted. It is nothing, my lady, Volray lied. Nothing. One of her delicate eyebrows rose. Then you do not require healing? No, my lady, it is but a scratch. Ah! Volray let out a groan of pleasure as green light encircled his wounded leg and healed it. Thank you. You should be apologizing in addition to thanking me, Volray, she scolded. My lady. Volray lifted an eyebrow. She put a finger underneath his chin. For lying to me. I cannot have my blood knight grievously injured like that and still be able to rely upon him. No, of course, Lady Asherin, Volray quickly said. His eyes darted to Declan, and his lips flattened when their eyes met. I am sorry, but it was. If you say a lucky strike, I will be quite cross. No one gets a lucky strike against you, she said with a pointed look at Volray. Declan felt a welling of pride, but it was mixed with something else. Why don't you go train some of the other novices? I believe that your job here is done. For now. Volray bowed low. His eyes were again on Declan. They were filled with something. Declan couldn't discern the emotion, not the usual hatred, but something perhaps more dangerous. Volray spun on his heel and left the training circle. It wasn't until he was out of sight that Lady Asherin turned to him. Her red eyes flickered over all of his wounds, but no green light of healing appeared in her hands and traveled to him. I wish I could heal you too, she said quietly. The pain is good, Declan said as he lifted his chin up. He knew, somehow, that novices of the Venom Thorn were not to be healed. They must experience the agony of the blows they failed to block. Is it? She didn't sound so sanguine about that. It teaches. Declan repeated words that sounded rote to his own ears. That is what they say, she agreed, but her expression reflected quite the opposite. She brought her hands together in front of her, lacing her fingers together as if to stop herself from reaching for him. The jeweled rings on her fingers glittered in the low light of the lumen stones. The silver bracelets that ran up and down her bare arms shimmered too. Will you walk a little with me? Perhaps we can go sit in our favorite place. Her face lit up at this idea. He felt another burst of warmth. Their favorite place. It was something secret they shared, that she shared with him. He did not think she had such times with other novices. Yes, whatever you wish, my lady. It is what you wish for, too, isn't it? She asked. Of course. It is an honor to be with you, he assured her. Oh, an honor. I was hoping that maybe you liked being with me, she joked. I do, he hastened to add. I truly, truly do. Another smile lit up her face, and she gestured for him to walk beside her. He sheathed the one dagger that remained in the side of his loincloth so that it brushed against his bare thigh. They walked in silence out of the circle and up the winding path of black stone that led them up to a cliff top that overlooked a vast black lake. And on the other side of that lake was a city. Declan stared at it with a sense of awe and recognition. The city was made up of mushroom-shaped buildings, but they were hundreds of feet tall and made of glowing glass. Orange, green, purple, red, gold, all the colors of the rainbow. They illuminated the endless night of the massive cavern. Boats with purple sails drifted over the black waters towards the city of light and disappeared into its many canals. Every time I see Nahamashel, my heart lifts, Ashrin said as she seated herself on a large boulder. She let her long legs swing back and forth almost like a child. He found himself smiling at that. She didn't allow others to see her so unguarded. Not like she let him. She caught his smile and returned it. She patted the rock beside her. Sit with me, she requested. He tried not to groan in pain as he sat down a foot away from her. The wounds on his back were throbbing and his thighs were numb. The chill was utterly gone. You did not let go. Another disgusted sigh. He saw her frown, and her hands glowed green for a moment, as if the urge to heal him was too great to hold it back. But she did not use the magic upon him. So, you bested Volray, she said with a touch of pride in her voice. I may be Jadir, but I draw blood from the best, he thought. But there was still a bitterness on his tongue. He did not use his magic against me, he answered. Aren't you a strange young elf? She laughed almost delightedly. Elf, he thought, but then that thought was gone. Strange? He frowned. He did not want her to think him strange or different or anything like that. Most would be crowing over such an achievement, she said with a knowing smile. But not you. He stared at the reflection of Nahamashel in the water. It does not feel like a victory. Why not? Because it will only cause him to hate me more, and I'm not yet strong enough to defeat him and survive, Declan admitted. Unless you let go, the voice whispered. She blinked slowly. He does not hate you. It is not my place to contradict you, but... But, she smiled. He hates me, Declan answered simply. This was a fact. It was non-negotiable. It was not just Volray's taunting words, but his actions. Yet to list those to her would sound like grievances, and he was grateful to be in the Venom Thorn and not out on the streets or dead in the water or wild. You think this because he is harder on you than on the other novices? She asked. He singles you out for more training, does he? Has you spar against 3 instead of 1? Makes you the hunted instead of the hunter in all the chases. All of those things made little sense to Declan, but he nodded his head to confirm them. There was more to it than that, though. Flashes of less food, a ragged blanket, constant harassment by the other novices went through his mind, but he mentioned none of them. Again, he had no family, no name, nothing. He was Jadir, yet she had taken him in. She was kind to him. She wanted to heal him, even though he had bled her blood knight. You realize that those things have also caused you to be the first to ever cause him to bleed, don't you? She asked. He froze. First? Yes, first. No novice has ever done that. And here you did it. She was smiling broadly and nodding as if this was something she had expected all along. So young. And you did it. Declan frowned. Perhaps it was a lucky strike. No. She covered one of his hands with hers for a brief moment. No, it was not. It was a sign of things to come. I don't understand. The other novices are so much more ahead of me, he admitted softly. Oh? They all have their first blood weapons. I have been unable to create one, he told her. Surely she knew this. He had been certain that Volray had told her with great relish how he kept failing over and over again, despite all that they had given him. She had given him. The dagger at his hip was borrowed, just like the loincloth and the sandals. None of it was his. But the victory against Volray was. It was mine. And I have not experienced the awakening. He pressed a hand against his chest. She nodded, almost thoughtfully. Those must seem like grave failures indeed. You must believe that there's something wrong with you. Declan's head snapped towards her. His breath caught in his throat. Do you think something is? No. She looked at him full on and took both of his hands in hers. Her hands were warm. She was gentle with him. No one was gentle with him. No one touched him at all unless it was with violence. At least not in this now. I am going to tell you something that few know or remember. She half smiled, or pretend not to anyway. What? His eyes flickered over her face, trying to discern if she really thought something wasn't wrong with him. Was she lying? But why would she? Vex could not perform a single spell until he was 3 times your age, she confessed with an almost girlish glee. Declan blinked. He knew that name. Vex, Zelroth Vex, the Night King. A face with blonde hair and round glasses swam up before his mind's eye, telling him excitedly about this Vex. Our king, Declan asked. Yes, our king, the dark god himself, could not perform a single spell, not even conjure a wisp to light his way. Before him, of course, there were no blood weapons. He was the first to create them, she explained with a distant look on her face as if remembering this. But again, he did not forge his first until an age had passed. His family thought him a complete null, yet we now know that he is the greatest mage that has ever existed, and likely ever will. So you see, you are in good company. But the king is... The king? And you are just you? She laughed. Yes, but before Vex was the king, before he was who he is now, he was a boy, struggling to find his way, desperate to be accepted, but knowing he might never be, underestimated and looked down upon, yet he became... Here she paused and licked her lips. Well, he became what he became. But his greatness is unmatched. He began from nothing, just like you. You truly think that I could be so great as King Vex? Declan's voice showed his hope and his uncertainty. That seemed so outlandish to him. Vex, the Night King, the boogeyman. That's what Finley described him as. Wait, who is Finley? Finley. Her expression was almost sad as she said, Oh, yes, I am sure of it. She squeezed his hands again before releasing them. If Volray is harder on you than the others, it is because I've asked him to be. He stared at her. You? The world that Vex has created for us is hard. So very hard. And you must be able to defend yourself, she explained. I have tasked Volray with this. I thought perhaps it was because. Here he paused. What? Because I told him that I wanted to join your blood knights, Lady Ashrin. Declan got out, his throat thick with emotion. I would give my life for you. You have given me everything. Her red eyes searched his face. Her expression was strange. Not pleased or displeased. Just empty. His heart sank. Had he just made a terrible mistake in confessing such a dream? He stammered out, but that is, if you do not think, I realize I am no one, but I owe you everything, and you owe me nothing. She cut in and was abruptly standing. She looked at him. When Volray tests you, when he pushes you, when he wants more from you than seems right or just, know that it is my caring for you that is causing him to act that way. It is the only thing I can give you, a chance to let your strength grow. Then she walked away. He was left blinking after her, too stunned by her words, too confused by their meaning to know what to make of them. He stayed on the cliff, gazing at Nahamashal and thinking on her words until the wind chilled him to the bone. Stiff and sore, he got down from the rock and began making his way back to the large black building beyond the training circle. Unlike the buildings in Nahamashal, the keep of the Venom Thorn was made of dull black stone and had sheer walls with only slit-like windows. He would get a loaf of bread and creep up to his tower room, hopefully to sleep and not to dream. He was just exiting the path when he heard the softest scuff of a boot against the ground. He went to drop low and draw out his dagger, but his wound slowed him down and he was caught around the throat before he'd lowered himself an inch. An armored vambrace held him tight. Volray's voice filled his right ear. You told her that you want to protect her, did you? Declan could not speak because he could not breathe. Volray's forearm was cutting off his ability to draw in air. His feet frantically kicked at the armored legs, but no luck there. He reached down for his dagger. But you are her greatest weakness, Volray hissed. You are the reason that she will die. So the best way to protect her is to kill you. Dead. Again. The dagger was in Declan's hand, and he drew it back to strike. Only he wasn't being held around the throat. There was no path, no training circle, no Venom Thorn keep. He was crouched on top of a bed? And Volray was not there. But there was a figure in gold and crimson who was staring at him from across the room. Him. Eyes as blue as the sky. Hair as golden as the sun. King Aquilin Fairlin, ruler of the Arave Empire, star of his people. The kitchen knife was in Declan's right hand, not a dagger. The knife from his adopted parents' kitchen, the one he'd killed dozens of Leviathan with. No longer was there a tattoo of it on his forearm. The knife was in his hand, pointed at the Sun King's throat. Did you meet the love of your life at the tip of a knife? Evidently, this is just the way that Declan courts the Sun King with pointy weapons. But seriously, would this qualify as a meet cute? Maybe an RR meet cute. It's Kindreth foreplay after all. This was also the chapter where I had to go all out fantasy because we were leaving Earth and going to what appears to be the Underdark. I wanted it to feel just as real in the Underdark as it does here. Like you too could sense the shift of sand beneath your bare feet and hear the gruff, cruel voice of Volray in the cusp of your ear. Did I accomplish this? I hope I did. I hope I made it feel pretty real. And what do you think about this otherworld, this Underdark? Not to mention Declan's first interactions with Aquilin. So I admit that when I realized this was how they were going to interact their first time, I was like, yes, this is so in character. Did I succeed? Did I not succeed? Let me know in the comments. And again, please like, subscribe, share. It means so much to us, and we just love to get this out to more people. I
am having such a blast interacting with all of you. I just want to interact with more people and hear more thoughts and just, for the Night Prince to live in more people's heads. Thanks so much, guys.
Chapter 10. Too Many Questions. Finley stared at the stairs up to the second floor of the Dawn, where Aquilin had taken Declan 10 minutes earlier. Or had it been 15? Or 20? Or maybe just 5 minutes? It was hard to tell because it felt like an eternity. Finley's right leg rose up and down underneath the gaming table at a rapidly accelerating pace. So, are you the orc follower of the boy upstairs? Raythe asked Snaglack. The Sun Elf was sitting opposite Finley and kitty-corner to Snaglack, who was looking hopefully at Michael's back. Michael was at the bar getting more drinks for the table. He was chatting easily with Lily, but Finley saw his eyes flicker to the stairs every so often. He was worried about Declan, too. Finley's leg shook faster. Declan's strong, Snaglack answered simply. Yes, he must be if he took down 5 of your compatriots, Raythe pointed out. The general told the king and I that you would confirm that this actually happened. A human taking out 5 orcs by himself and not dying immediately. Finley tensed at every word. So Michael had told the Sun King about that. Michael was proud of Declan's abilities, so why wouldn't he? But unease slithered through Finley as this Sun Elf clearly found this believable yet unbelievable at the same time. It might cause him to ask more questions. Questions that Declan didn't want answered. Declan leader, Snaglack responded. Raythe's gray eyes narrowed. And those orcs weren't sick or infirm or something. They were big and strong like you seem to be, correct? Snaglack's black eyes left his almost empty beer mug and looked at Raythe, perhaps hearing for the first time the incredulity in the Sun Elf's tone mixed with something else. Something perhaps rude. It was never wise to be rude to an orc. Instead of answering him, Snaglack remarked, You smell funny. Raythe blinked. I smell what? Funny. Snaglack's black eyes narrowed at the Sun Elf. And by funny, I suppose you mean good. Raythe fluttered an elegant hand by his handsome face. If he meant good, he would have said good, Finley remarked without taking his eyes from the stairs. Yet he still caught sight of the obviously vain sun elf. Was there really any other kind, though this one was especially in love with himself, staring at him? Raythe smiled and let out a droll laugh and leaned back in his chair. He appeared to be more lying on it than sitting. Ah, well, I should be grateful, I suppose. If I smelled good to him, then he might eat me. You know that they eat other species, don't you? I'm sure he snacked on a human or two in his time, Raythe told him. Yet here he sits, acting as if he wouldn't want to roast us over that fire or even eat us raw. Wouldn't eat funny-smelling elf, Snaglack muttered into his now empty beer mug, more hopeful staring at Michael's back. You should be honored to eat me. Raythe's eyes were slitted. I will have you know that I am most delectable and stringy, Snaglack contradicted. You look stringy. Raythe actually sat up a little instead of his consistent sprawl. I am not stringy. I am quite luscious, actually. Snaglack glanced over at the lean, lithe sun elf. Not enough meat. Raythe really was glaring now. I would be the best meal you've ever had. Are you really arguing about what you would taste like to him? Finley asked, dragging his gaze away from the stairs. I mean, you don't really want him to eat you. And if he did, you wouldn't be alive for him to admit you're right and he's wrong anyways. There was silence at the table again. If he ate my leg, I'd still be alive to know about it, Raythe grumped. Don't want smelly, stringy leg, Snaglack muttered back. Both of you, enough. Finley gritted his teeth. Again, he looked at the stairs. No Aquilin, no Declan. What was happening up there? Was Declan all right? He shouldn't have let the Sun King shoo him out of the room. But really, could he have stayed? It was an order from the king to leave. And Aquilin actually was his king. That was so strange to think of, having been a member of a functioning democracy before all of this. He hadn't even gotten the chance to vote in his first presidential election, and now he never would. He shook himself. Why was he thinking about voting at a time like this? Because Declan is ill, really ill, and I can't be by his side. But every time he had attempted to go back up the stairs to maybe press his ear against the door or peek inside, either Michael or Raythe headed him off. But he had to know what was happening. Maybe this ridiculously arrogant, self-satisfied Raythe knew. Perhaps he could get something out of him, some knowledge at least about what healing magic Aquilin might use. That would be useful on the admissions test. Finley focused on Raythe. What is the Sun King doing with Declan? Raythe stopped glaring at the orc and turned to him with a curious, cat-like glance. Healing him, of course. What else would the king be doing to your friend? Should he be doing something else? I know that. What I meant was, what healing magic do you think he'll use? Raythe's eyes narrowed. Well, that depends on what's wrong with Declan. Do you know what's wrong with Declan? Finley swallowed the acidic saliva that was building up in his mouth. If only he had realized that Declan was outside sooner, then he and Snaglack could have rescued him before the Sun King had arrived. But no, he'd been so worked up about his game that he hadn't been paying attention, and now? I should be glad that King Aquilin is helping Declan. This sun sensitivity is no joke, to have it take him down like that twice. But Finley knew how desperate his best friend was to keep these things private. Anything unusual or different, Declan wanted to hide from everyone, especially the Sun Elves. And now he was being examined by the Sun King himself. It was literally the worst luck ever. Or maybe the best, for if Declan truly is ill, and he is, then King Aquilin surely will be able to cure him. He's the greatest mage in all of the Raythe Empire. And then Declan would see that there was no need to be afraid of the Sun Elves knowing of his differences. He might even be willing to tell others about his abilities, and then humanity would be recognized as having magic too, and... He stopped that train of thought.
It was so selfish. Utterly and completely selfish. That wasn't what Declan wanted. It was what Finley wanted, and it was for himself, not his best friend. Declan never desired to be singled out, even though he had always been. You mentioned to the king that your friend has had this reaction to the sun before. Just this afternoon, yes, the Sun Elf asked. Raythe was sprawled out again, looking so languid that he might just slip off the chair and onto the floor into a full coma. There was also quite a bit of his bared muscled chest showing. He'd removed his armored breastplate and had on only a white wrap shirt stitched with gold. There was a sort of fleshy sensuality to him. Finley was always amazed at how sexual the Sun Elves were, more like what he imagined the ancient Greeks and Romans were like than Tolkien's elves. If Raythe wasn't careful, his shirt would just slide off him altogether. I did, Finley answered carefully. Raythe's gray eyes were slitted, regarding Finley very carefully. To some people, his questions might have seemed solicitous, or perhaps a varied form of small talk to pass the time. But Finley's back was up. He wasn't sure if it was because of his own concern for Declan's secrets potentially getting out, or if there was something suspicious in the almost careless way Raythe asked his questions, as if he didn't care about the answers at all. Or he really did. Declan is alone with the king. He might be suspicious because he's worried that Aquilin could be in danger from him. Although, what could a human do against a sun elf, let alone the Sun King? Has he ever had this happen before today? Raythe played with a rather beautiful gold and ruby sun amulet. His long, elegant fingers rubbed over the precious gems with care. Immediately, Finley's thoughts raced to that time at the lake, but he wasn't going to explain that to this man. Why should he? He's fair-skinned. He's always been sun-sensitive. It's normal, Finley answered and bit his inner cheek. Did he have to say that last line? Didn't that make it seem like he didn't think it was normal? He is rather pale. Pale as moonlight. Raythe said the last softly, poetically, and Finley wondered if the Sun Elf had fallen for his best friend's looks, as so many did. But then Raythe's two intelligent gray eyes were fixed upon him again. But, then again, so are you. Do you often collapse in the sun? He wasn't wrong. Finley was very pale. He always burned when he sat out too long. He didn't even freckle, just turned red as a tomato and then peeled. He compared his white flesh against Raythe's deep gold coloring. He looked like day-old milk, while the Sun Elf was a glorious crispy toast color. What are you trying to say? Finley asked. Just that your friend's sun sensitivity can't be normal because of his fairness if you don't suffer the same fate. Raythe pointed out. Does he usually avoid the sun? Was there some reason he couldn't today? Finley blinked with every single word as suspicion flooded his mind. He works nights, but... Oh, of course. That would explain things. And he had to work days for the first time in a while? Raythe asked casually. Was it too casual? Come to think of it, King Aquilin had to shoo Raythe out of the room too. It was as if Raythe hadn't wanted to leave Aquilin alone with Declan. He'd consistently offered to take over Declan's care himself, but Aquilin had insisted on doing it without Raythe's help. There had been a moment when Raythe and Finley had been standing outside in the hallway with the door to the bedroom shut in their faces, where they'd given each other a rather similar look of displeasure. What does that have to do with anything? Finley asked. A shrug. Oh, nothing. Just trying to figure out when this problem began for your friend. I'm sure that you must be thinking about it yourself, trying to figure it all out. I'm sure the Sun King will fix whatever issue, if there even is an issue, with Declan, Finley insisted stiffly. Yes, he might very well do that. Raythe flashed him a toothy smile. I wonder if that will be the best thing. What? Declan isn't from around here, is he? Not originally, right? When did he arrive? Raythe asked. Finley's eyes narrowed. I don't see how that's any of your concern. Raythe's toothy smile grew.
Ah, so I am right. He is not from around here. Probably arrived when he was still a child. But who are his parents? Where are they? They're dead, Finley said, his voice clipped and cold. The Leviathan killed his mother and took his father, so, yeah, just like they killed mine and so many others. Rayleigh blinked. Oh, I see. That's unexpected. Finley frowned. Why would it be? But Michael was setting down the drinks in front of everyone at that moment and cut off their dueling. Jelly is for you, Michael said as he placed a goblet of cold white wine in front of Rayleigh, who eagerly reached for it. And here's a pitcher of beer for you and me, Snaglack. Snaglack, whose face had been suffused with happiness, suddenly turned dour when he realized that they would be sharing. Maybe we need 2 pitchers, Michael? Michael was busy pouring a beer into his glass. Don't worry, Snaglack. I won't let you go thirsty. Here, finish off the rest. He pushed the mostly full pitcher to the orc, who eagerly filled his glass to the brim. Are you sure you don't want anything, Finley? Finley shook his head. The thought of eating or drinking anything when Declan was upstairs had his stomach clenching. So, dear General, we were talking about Declan, your orc-defeating son. It's my understanding that he wasn't born here, Rayleigh offered. No, he was adopted from a place called Ukraine, across the Atlantic Ocean, Michael answered. Oh, so his parents here weren't his birth parents. Was he a baby when he was adopted? Rayleigh asked, nodding to the answers as if they confirmed things he already knew. Finley very much wanted to stop Michael from answering this question, though he wasn't quite sure why. These things were well known about Declan, and they didn't reveal anything about him that shouldn't be known. Not really. No, he was about 10, I think. Terrible story. Lost his parents in a car crash. Has no memory whatsoever of his early life, Michael answered. Rayleigh's expression went smooth and unreadable for a moment. How terrible indeed. And then to lose his adopted parents in the war after that. What bad luck. Michael nodded. He's been through a lot. His eyes lifted to the stairs again. I hope that he's not in for another hard time of it. Indeed. Rayleigh took a deep swallow of wine. That would be unfortunate, especially after surviving so much. His eyes were on Finley once more. Surviving the battle here. You did too, didn't you, Finley? You don't have to talk about that, Finley, Michael interceded swiftly. His expression was stony as he regarded Rayleigh, as I'm sure you understand. Rayleigh smiled. Oh, yes, of course. I wasn't going to ask about it. I understand your position on that. Position? What position? Finley wondered. The thing was that Michael never did ask him, Declan, or Gemma about what happened during the war. He had in the beginning, but when it was clear that talking about it was too hard, he'd backed off, and now it was almost verboten. My understanding is that you're going to apply to Taranth, Finley. Rayleigh changed the subject. Are those your study materials? He was gesturing towards the journals that had Finley's meticulous notes for his games, but before he could respond, the notebook full of his material on Zelroth Vax was suddenly levitating up from the table and shooting into the Sun Elf's hand. It was done so easily, so beautifully, so without thought to how amazing it truly was, that Finley was stunned into immovability. Finley only came to himself when he saw Rayleigh opening the cover. Hey, wait, that's not study material. It's private, Finley cried and tried to snatch the journal back, but Rayleigh easily kept it out of his reach. No, this most certainly isn't material on the test for Taranth. In fact, if they realize your interest in the Night King, I wonder what they will do. Rayleigh chuckled as he turned the pages, his eyes flowing over the words. It's for my game, Finley said with a scowl as he extended his right hand and gestured for Rayleigh to return the journal. He did not. I'm using the Night King as the big bad. Realizing that this might not mean anything to Rayleigh, he expanded. The real enemy who is only revealed at the end of the game? Well, you certainly did pick the biggest of the bad. I'll give you that. Rayleigh's expression, which had been amused, suddenly changed. This is surprisingly accurate. Finley's smart. Read big old books. Snaglak defended him, which had Finley smiling at the orc. I told you that Finley is teaching McTeer. He has his own library card to the Athenaeum, Michael said proudly. He's read through dozens of history books about the Kindreth. Raythe continued to turn the pages and read his notes. Finley gritted his teeth. Can I have that back, please? Finley asked. I'm surprised that the Athenaeum has dozens of books on the Kindreth. The Sun Elves like to pretend they don't exist, Raythe remarked. Well, there's not as much lore as I would like, but I'm finding as much as there is out there. Finley couldn't help the note of pride in his voice, but then he shook himself. Not that it matters to you. Now, please. What's this? Raythe had turned to the page with one of his doodles of Illithor, the city he'd seen through the rift. The Sun Elf went rather rigid. His head shot towards Finley. His voice was sharp as he asked, Did you copy this out of one of those books? He turned the journal towards Finley to show the illustration. It was just a pen and ink sketch of some of the towers he'd caught sight of, and certain arching bridges. Michael took the journal out of Raylegh's hands. Raylegh's lips opened. Michael gave him a look. It was one of the looks he could give that had everyone from presidents to enemy generals quailing. It had the same effect on Raythe, who slumped back into his chair. This is yours, I believe, Finley. Michael handed the journal to Finley. Thank you. Finley smiled at Michael and glared at Raythe, who appeared unrepentant. Finley tucked the journal securely into the inner pocket of his robes. Did you copy that illustration out of one of those books? The illustration of the city, I mean, Raythe repeated. No, that I drew from memory, Finley said curtly, as he sat back down in his chair. Raylegh's interest, which had been so focused on Declan, despite his claims to be making small talk, now was fully focused on Finley. And Finley didn't know how he felt about it. The Sun Elf was no longer languid. He was intense, like a live wire, though he didn't appear to blink or even breathe. Do you know what that is? Raythe asked softly. Finley fussed with his other journals that had been thrown out of alignment when Raythe had levitated the Vex one away. I do. It's Illithor. Raylegh's gray eyes glowed silver. His lips parted and he let out a soft breath. You know this, because I did find sketches of it in the history books. I compared the two and confirmed that I saw the Forsaken Tower and the Sanguine Pillar. Yes, that is what those are. But are you certain that you saw them, and you didn't just conflate them later with what you looked at in books? Raythe asked intently. Michael lifted an eyebrow. You're the first person to actually take Finley seriously about this, Lord Nerys. Finley went to the Glass Scholar and was pooh-poohed. That's because he's a fool, Raythe said with almost a sharp snap of his teeth. Then, seeing the increase of the lift of Michael's eyebrow, he added, As I said earlier, the Sun Elves seem to avoid knowing anything about the Kindreth, so I'm not surprised he refused to see what was right in front of his face. His gaze, rapacious and intense, so intense that it seemed to spear into Finley, was back upon the young man. Where was this rift? Exactly where you saw Illithor. Finley blinked and shifted. He'd wanted someone in authority to take him seriously about seeing Illithor, and Raythe was definitely in authority as the Sun King's best friend. But suddenly, he wasn't so sure if that was wise. Don't be silly. He might know more about Illithor and the Kindreth. Finally, someone who might have the same interests as me, Finley thought. But he's so, I don't know. It was where Declan used to live. He pointed in the general direction of their old homes. Take me there. Raythe half rose from his seat, as if he meant for Finley to do so now. Why? It's not like the rift is still there. It was destroyed long ago, Finley pointed out. Raythe suddenly sagged in his seat, as if he was a balloon that had been punctured. Yes, of course. They sealed all the rift's material, so it's gone. His utter dejection actually conjured some sympathy in Finley. The city was beautiful, and also terrifying, but alluring all the same. Do you know much about Illithor? Finley asked, determined to get some answers from the Sun Elf for once in this conversation. But before Raythe could answer, a booming dwarvish voice called from the doorway. Well, 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 I hear that I have some royal visitors. Helgrim Greatfall had returned to the dawn.
Declan and Acklin are, for now, the more straightforward couple. I mean, they're not antagonistic, I could say. But they did meet at the point of a knife, but we all know the real knife fight is between Finley and Raythe. They are both very protective of their best friends, so of course, they antagonize each other when they first meet. As the excellent member and commenter Leisurely Panda put it, this meeting was exactly the kind of dramatic train wreck that I was hoping for. Yeah, I love these train wrecks too. It was so funny to see them like this, though I'm afraid Raythe has made an ass of himself. And he will continue to do so, Leisurely Panda, don't you worry. He'll have to apologize later for that, and many more things, especially as Finley will likely be less susceptible to his charms now. Oh, Finley is so not susceptible, except he's totally susceptible to Raythe's charms. So I'm really curious to hear what you guys have to say about this difference between Declan and Acklin versus Raythe and Finley. Do you have a fave yet? Who's winning out? Team Sun King or Team Raythe? I mean, we have to find out. I have to know. Again, thank you guys for all your thoughtful comments, all yours liking and subscribing and sharing. It's just been amazing. This so means so much to me that you're on this journey with me, that we're getting to talk. And writing is like a lonely business. Trust me. Hearing from you guys just makes it so good and so wonderful. Looking forward to talking to you next week.
Chapter 11. On a Knife's Edge. Declan dropped the knife to the floor, as if it were made of magma. It clattered and spun, ending somewhere under the bed. He stared at Acklin. Acklin stared back at him. The king did not look afraid. Alarmed? Yes. Concerned? Yes. But not about himself. About Declan? Maybe. Acklin slowly and gracefully lifted a hand towards Declan. The firelight, that was the only light in the room, sparkled on the gold vambraces he wore. Thank God, no sunlight. The king spoke. Declan. Declan? Who is Declan? His brain screeched to a halt. He was Declan. Declan was him. He lifted a shaking hand to his forehead, which was covered in cold sweat. He felt so weak, so awful. Was this now? How did I get here? Declan asked as his legs started to wobble beneath him. He firmed them. He would not show weakness. To show weakness was to invite attack. To be attacked in this state was to likely fail. To fail was to die. Again. I brought you here, Acklin explained softly. Myself, General Baston, and Raythe found you outside. Outside? The sun. Oh, the sun. It was so bright, Declan thought. But it wasn't bright here. It was dark, blessedly dark. The window's shutters were firmly closed. If Declan could have hugged the darkness to him, he would have. More cold sweat soaked the collar of his shirt. Aquilin continued. You were quite ill, so I took you up to one of the rooms of the dawn. Yeah, I know, I recognize it. Now, Declan interrupted, pleased that he remembered something clearly, but displeased he had stopped the king from speaking. His voice, God, his voice, it's like warm honey. He shook himself. This was not the time. He was sick, weak, exposed. And all of that in front of the damned king. Good. I'm glad you know that. Perhaps we could speak further once you sit down, or perhaps lay down, Aquilin offered, taking a step towards him. Declan froze, and his eyes were fixed on the Sun Elf again. Aquilin held up both hands as if to show he carried no weapons, was no threat, intended no harm. But Declan knew that meant nothing. Sun Elves had magic. They needed no weapons. They could strike. But why would he? Why would he hurt me? I'm nothing to him. I'm nothing. His legs were wobbling again. He tried to keep upright, but went down on one knee, and then the king was on him. Declan let out a shrill cry of despair that he had fallen, but Aquilin didn't hurt him. He was gently helping Declan lay down on his back on the soft, soft bed. He was arranging the pillows for him, pulling the comforter over him. "The comforter will bind my arms. It will make it harder for me to fight. Shh, shh, Declan. It's all right. You're safe," Aquilin murmured. "Safe? Nowhere is safe. Like trust. Safe is a weak word," Declan muttered, half unaware he was saying anything. A flash of pain appeared in Aquilin's eyes. "That's not true, Declan. You are safe with me. And you can trust me. That does not make you weak. Volray wouldn't buy that. Who is Volray? The guy in the dream, the Kindreth, the one that was going to kill me. But it was a dream. And it's over. Thank God it's over," Declan thought. He shivered as cold sweat burst out from every pore, and yet he felt on fire at the same time. Hot and cold, sweating and freezing, Aquilin's empty hands were now limned with soft green light. Healing magic, Declan remembered. That's what she wanted to use, Lady Ashrin. God, that dream! More like a nightmare. Aquilin placed one of those green-limbed hands against the center of Declan's chest. It was the green of new spring shoots, the color of living things. And Declan swore he smelled freshly cut grass after the rain as waves of warmth flowed out from that hand throughout his whole body. He let out a moan of pleasure, understanding now why Volray had reacted as he did. But that was a dream. I didn't know how healing magic felt before now. This will help you. I swear I will not harm you. No one will harm you, Aquilin soothed. Against his will, Declan settled down into the pillows and mattress more, his body lax, his eyelids beginning to droop again. If he was not careful, he would sleep once more. Sleep and dream, or sleep in... Aquilin was speaking again. I am not certain yet what ails you. What I am doing now is balancing your energy. As I said, this will not harm you in any way. It will aid you in healing. I'm not ill, Declan insisted through chattering teeth. Even without his teeth pretending to be castanets, it was a rather ridiculous thing to say, considering he couldn't even keep on his feet. He can't know about me in the sun. He can't. Except Aquilin must already know. He'd found Declan like a fish out of water in the sun, gasping and unable to even crawl to the thin shadows the trees cast. He'd told Finley that the Sun Elves would naturally distrust anyone or anything that was affected adversely by sunlight. After all, weren't the Leviathan blown apart by light? And most of the beings that had come from the Underdark, monsters and the morally suspect, were also harmed by the sun. So if he was harmed by the sun too, then... But he was human. Humans were not impacted adversely by sunlight. They needed it, about the benefits of vitamin D. But the very thought of ever going into daylight again had him shuddering. If Aquilin hadn't come when he had, what would have happened to him? He should be grateful to this elf. Again, Aquilin had saved him for a second time. But what must he think of me? While I am not a mender, Aquilin was saying, I am quite good at healing. There was a slight bashful smile as he added that last bit. You're the most powerful magic wielder of all the Arve, Declan croaked out. That had Aquilin reaching for a cup of water on the nightstand beside the bed. He helped Declan sit up and placed the cup to his lips. Declan took a drink of water, and then he was taking the cup from Aquilin's hand and downing it. Water sloshed over his chin and soaked the front of his shirt. He thrust it out towards the king without thinking. More? Aquilin asked. He nodded, then flushed. He just asked, no, demanded wordlessly, that the king get him a cup of water, but Aquilin didn't seem to mind playing nursemaid to him. Indeed, Aquilin merely poured another cup for him from the pitcher on the nightstand. Declan wanted to do it himself, but his hands were shaking, and he feared he would simply drop the earthenware pitcher on the ground where it would shatter. Aquilin gave him the full cup. He drank this one more slowly and carefully, only letting a dribble of water escape and run down his chin. He wiped his mouth with the back of his right hand and stared at the king. Is this real? Is he actually here? I've been thinking about him for so long. This feels like another dream. Or another nightmare. Not sure which. Why are you here? Declan asked, then quickly amended, with me. Aquilin moved his long hair back from his shoulders. It looked soft, and even in the low light of the fire, he could see different colors of gold, bronze, and platinum in the strands. The firelight shimmered in it. He wondered what it would be like to draw his fingers through it. Would it be as silky as it appeared? Would it smell of roses? He dragged his eyes away. The king's hair should not be so fascinating. We were coming to the dawn when we found you outside. My skills at healing exceed even Raythe's, so. But if you prefer a mender, we could send for one, Aquilin offered, but there was the faintest hesitation before he said that, as if he didn't want Declan to desire another healer. I don't need a mender, Declan stated flatly. His adopted parents' caution for him to be examined by doctors of any sort reared up inside of him. Magical doctors would be even worse. But wouldn't having the king look at him be the absolute last thing he should want? Well, the king had already examined him, so there was nothing to be done about that. He could, and would, keep anyone else from being involved. Are you certain you just don't want me? Aquilin gave an uncertain smile. When you realized it was I who found you outside, you said, well, it doesn't matter. Just know that if you wish for another to assist you, I will not be offended. No. Aquilin blinked. No, as to me helping you, or I don't want anyone else, Declan answered, cradling the cup to his chest. I don't need. What did I say to you when you found me? You indicated that you were upset. It was me who found you like that, Aquilin said. Why would I say that? Declan asked, though we already knew. His adopted mother had always said to him, the problem about secrets is that the harder we try to keep them hidden, the more fate seems to want them revealed. Hadn't she said that when his high school had been asking for more medical clearances? Yes. She'd been staring at her laptop at the required list of forms she had to fill out for him to attend school. She'd given a helpless little laugh and covered her mouth as if to stop more from escaping. When he'd asked her what was wrong, she'd said that to him, about secrets being revealed. And wasn't that happening here, at least in part? His sun sensitivity was dangerous for any normal sun elf to know about. But the king? For God's sake, he could not have planned this worse if he had tried. I do not know why you said that, but I would hear whatever reason you have, Aquilin said with a faint smile. Declan turtled forward, realizing he was being foolish. Again, Finley was the one that was good with words. He just needed to be quiet, or he'd just get himself into more trouble. Of course, you don't know. That was stupid. Everything I've said to you is stupid and not worth repeating or thinking about, Declan mumbled. I was ill. Aquilin studied him carefully. I do not believe that you ever say anything stupid or not worth thinking about. Declan's eyes shifted to Aquilin, but then quickly away. He kept his mouth firmly shut. Aquilin didn't rush to fill the silence. The fire crackled in the hearth. There was the faint noise of the bar beneath them. And yet, Aquilin seemed in no hurry to leave him. Finally, the Sun King said, So, are we in agreement that I will be the one taking care of you, Declan? There was no getting out of this without offending the king. He was nobody. He was nothing. But Michael, Finley, and Gemma's lives might be adversely affected if he earned the Sun King's ire too. So he did the only thing he really could. In a tone that was oddly formal yet felt right, Declan answered, I would be honored, King Aquilin. You are recovering swiftly on your own, Aquilin said, but there were faint, worried lines appearing on his forehead. But we do not know what caused you to collapse in the first place. Finley. You spoke to Finley? Declan's eyes immediately searched the room for his best friend, but he already knew that he and Aquilin were alone here. He was keenly aware of that. Yes, he was quite concerned about you. He mentioned you'd gotten ill earlier in the day. Aquilin let that sentence hang. Had Finley said too much? No. Finley would have kept his mouth shut, even with the king. Except Finley had said that if he got sick again, he would go get a mender. Finley didn't believe him that the RVA would look upon him with suspicion if he was sun-sensitive. Sensitive? It was more than that. Where is he, Finley? Declan qualified. He and General Baston are downstairs with my best friend, Lord Raythe. I assure you that both of them truly wish to be by your side, but I thought quiet was better, Aquilin explained. Michael is here? Declan couldn't help his shock at that. General Michael Baston was many, many good things, but he was also a workaholic. He would never go to the Dawn during the workday, unless... Yes, he met us on our way to Tyrrell, Aquilin said and looked thoughtful. He is an interesting man. He's a great man, Declan stated firmly. Aquilin's blue eyes flickered over his face, but then he nodded. Yes, he thinks the world of you and Finley, too. You saved his daughter, Gemma, from the Leviathan. Declan lowered his head and gripped the empty cup. We just made it through until you came. Though he wasn't looking directly at the Sun King, he sensed Aquilin stiffen. He let his eyes flicker up to the Sun King's face. Aquilin's mouth was flattened into a tight line. Carefully, Aquilin said, I saw you three that day. I don't know if you saw me. You were the sudden dawn. Declan said, his voice thick with emotion. You destroyed the monsters. We all saw you. I saw you. No one could miss you. That's why Helgrim named the inn that. The Sudden Dawn. After you. Aquilin had done what he could not. Destroy every single one of those foul beasts that had killed his adopted mother and father. They came for you. His mother's whispered words went through his head. She hadn't meant the Sun Elves. She'd meant the Leviathan. No, they couldn't have come for me. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. Why would they come for me? His mind went very still, and then he thought, please let them not have come for me. I am so sorry that I did not arrive sooner. Aquilin's voice was brittle, as if it might shatter. I am sure that is cold comfort for you and yours, considering how much everyone lost in Tyrrell. Declan frowned, confused at the guilt in Aquilin's tone. You came. You didn't have to. You could have let the Leviathan wipe us out. We were nothing to you back then, not even part of the Empire. Aquilin's hands bunched in his lap. He had such elegant hands. Declan knew that he wielded swords, bows, and magic with those hands. He wondered if the king's palms were rough with calluses, or were they soft like silk. He wrenched his eyes away from those hands. You live under the sun. Therefore, you are my concern, Aquilin finally said. Not me, Declan thought. The sun hurts me. You did all you could. You conquered the Leviathan. They retreated, Declan said, feeling the absurd need to convince the Sun King that he had done enough for humanity. But not, I fear, Aquilin murmured. Declan froze. That's the nonsense word I yelled after Mom. Mom died. But it's not a Katir word. What? It's a Kindrith word. It means to the end, and so much more. So very much more. Aquilin gave him a shadow of a smile, having intuited what he was thinking. Of course you would not know it. Few do, even among the Arave. It is not encouraged to know much about the Kindrith. It's a Kindrith word, Declan thought. Why do I know a Kindrith word? He thought of Volray. Was that just a dream? Volray had had white hair and red eyes, just like Finley had told him of the Night Elves. And Night Elves are harmed by the sun. No, it was just a dream. I can't be. Despite his mind spinning, he found himself saying, Why? They're your great enemy, are they not? You should know everything about them. Another soft, sad smile. The Kindreth left long ago for the endless depths of the Underdark. We have not seen even one of their kind for. Here, Aqualin's eyes left him, and he was staring into the distance for a very long time. And for some reason, Declan felt the Sun King was lying about that. But why would he? Likely so I don't freak out and start telling everyone that the Kindreth have been sighted. From how Finley explained it, the Kindreth are the monsters under the bed, worse than the Leviathan, worse than anything. His mind flashed back to the dream he'd had. Volray Voltoris, Blood Knight to Lady Ashrin Zinzadoral, and Master of the Venom Thorn. There were such specific names, hardly ones he would just make up. Maybe Finley had told him something about these people in his research on Vex. He must have. But even so, what was going on with him? First, the sun sensitivity, and now this dream that didn't feel like a dream at all. He was drawing attention to himself. He was sticking out. He must not do that, especially in front of the king. Who had told him to keep low? His adopted parents, himself? Why was he so very certain that he should keep himself hidden at all costs? Except I'm not hidden now. I'm in front of the most powerful person in all of the Empire. He saved me from the sun. He'll have questions. I have to get out of here before I give too much away. Too much of what? His voice was low and rushed as he said, King Aquilin, I'm the one who should be sorry. I've been behaving probably not how I should with you, and the knife. Aquilin interrupted his apology, an attempt to slip out of the bed. In fact, the RFA placed a firm hand on his chest and kept him right where he was. The knife, the damn knife, Declan thought. He swallowed hard and said, I'm so very sorry about that. Was it the same one you had the day the Leviathan came? The one you had in your hand when I saw you with the other two? Gemma and Finley, right? Aquilin asked. His expression was quite intent, quite earnest, but not like a man who had a knife pulled on him. It was something altogether different. Declan swallowed again. His throat was so dry. It felt like the sides of it were sticking together. Was the knife back on his arm as a tattoo, or was it still under the bed? Which should he wish for? Aquilin's expression grew gentle as he asked, Have you kept it with you since the attack? To feel safe? Oh, Declan had kept it with him all right. He had it literally tattooed on his skin. And what human could do that? He thrust that thought aside. Finley thought humans could do magic. Maybe he truly was proof of that. Or maybe it was something to do with his exposure to the Leviathan that had changed him and the knife, or maybe... Declan got out. I'm so sorry I attacked you. I did not mean... I would never harm you. I was dreaming, and... Declan, I'm not angry or concerned about that, Aquilin assured him, his right hand, which was still touching the center of Declan's chest, pressed tighter against him. Aquilin lowered his head. Tyrael was the first place to be attacked. You three were the only ones who survived. I want to make sure that you, of all people, feel safe now. There is no safety. Anyone who says otherwise is lying to get you to drop your guard so that they can strike. Volray's voice rose up in Declan's mind. I feel safe, Declan lied. Aquilin lifted his eyes to study Declan's face. He did not believe Declan. But he did not say so. But there was a flash of disappointment or sadness, Declan couldn't tell which, that passed over his hauntingly beautiful face. I'll remember every moment of this time with him. I will have to. I'm certain it will never come again. I should hope it does not. I need to get downstairs. Lily can't handle the dawn on her own. Declan said as he resolutely pushed the covers off of him. Declan, we have not determined what is wrong. Nothing is. I haven't eaten today and didn't get much sleep. He lied again, not meeting Aquilon's eyes. And the honey brew was cursed by fairy magic, so... He shrugged. Fairy magic? Ah, that explains the smell. Aquilon let out a delighted laugh that skated down Declan's spine. So that's what you were doing with the barrel outside. He nodded as he slid around Aquilon's seated form on the edge of the bed and got onto his feet. He held his breath as he stood up, fearful that he would collapse again and cause the king to investigate his illness yet more. But his legs were firm. He saw his boots were nicely set by the foot of the bed. Had Aquilon taken off his boots and put them there? It was such a kind gesture, and so beneath the king, that Declan couldn't quite picture it. Or rather, he could picture it, and it made him feel strangely warm inside. He thrust that thought away as he stuffed his feet in his boots. I truly think you should rest, Declan, Aquilon advised, but he didn't order Declan to stay, so Declan supposed he could ignore it. What were the rules of dealing with a king? His king, he supposed. It was so strange. Aquilon did not act like some kind of god-high emperor or anything. Instead, he was quite down to earth. Well, for a glorious Raythe, anyway. He actually made the non-royal Raythe look snotty in comparison. It was strange. Declan was certain he would think about this for endless hours, days, months, years, to parse it all out, even though he was trying to get out of the man's presence now as quickly as possible. Aquilon was still sitting on the edge of the bed, watching him, and Declan flushed when he realized he was under the king's regard. Aquilon's expression was so odd. It was as if he wanted to ask Declan something quite desperately, but could not or would not. Yet what kind of question would a king not ask his subject? And what could Declan answer that would mean so much to his king? You should join your friend downstairs, King Aquilon, Declan advised, wondering if it was okay to advise a king of anything. If you're staying, we have wonderful wine and food. I don't know if that would interest you, but I will make sure you're taken care of. Aquilon smiled. I wish to be taking care of you, Declan, but I can see that you will not let me. At least not today. Declan blinked. That last part seemed to indicate the king intended to try and take care of him another day. But no. Once Aquilon left the dawn, Declan would never see him again. Not so close. Not so personal. Not to notice the way the firelight reflected in his hair, or the way his full lips pursed just so, or how he moved with such grace and economy. Aquilon rose. Yes, I will go down with you, if only to keep an eye on you. And if you feel ill in the least, I am fine, Declan assured him, and, like with the time that afternoon, he seemed recovered. But if I went out in the sun again, I think I would get sicker far faster. Maybe not recover for some time, he thought. Good, Aquilon said, but if you do, I will sit down and rest, Declan stated. Excellent. Now do you wish to get your knife? Aquilon tilted his head towards the bed. Declan's mouth dried of all saliva. Was the knife still under the bed? Or was it a tattoo on his arm? Regardless, he had to get it or pretend to. Aquilon would find it awfully strange if he didn't. I need to show him it when I get out from under the bed. Yeah, Actually, I should get it for you, Aquilon said, frowning slightly. You should not be crawling around. No, I'll get it. Declan immediately dropped to his hands and knees before oiling underneath the bed. There was no knife under there. It was back on his arm. How was he going to explain this? Do you see it? Aquilon asked. It's just... Wait a minute. Let me... I can use magic to... No, I have it. Declan lied. He wrenched the sleeve of his hoodie up to expose the tattoo. For the first time in his life, he willed the damn thing to appear in his hand. Nothing happened. Oh, come on! Appear, goddamn you! Declan? Aquilon said, and he was staring into the king's blue eyes again. They were both under the bed. Both of them were lying on the ground on their bellies, Staring at one another across the length of the mattress, a dust bunny drifted between them. Both of them tracked its progress as it passed from left to right, and the knife. It was in his right hand. The dust bunny passed it by. Ah, I see you found it, Ackland said with an almost rueful smile, as if he was regretful that they couldn't spend more time rooting underneath the bed looking for the knife. I did. Thank God. It was just far under, here. Declan gestured with the knife around them before realizing that he was once more using a knife around the king. He firmly set it flat against the ground. But we should get up. Yes, indeed. Declan waited for Ackland to move first, and seemingly Ackland was waiting for Declan to move first. The laughter that bubbled out of the king's mouth soon had Declan smiling as well. I think neither of us really want to go back to our duties. Ackland sighed and rested his chin in his hands. What duties await you downstairs? Declan asked, if you can say. Those blue eyes met his. A rather rueful smile crossed the king's lips, but then he gave a brief nod. I think I can tell you. Perhaps I can tell you, most of all. Me? Declan thought. Why me? I'm nothing. I need to understand how things truly are here with all of humanity, Ackland explained. Perhaps you could help me with that? Declan wanted to say yes. Nearly every part of him was screaming at himself to say yes. He had never felt so comfortable with anyone other than Finley, but this was a different sort of comfort. It made him feel warm in ways he couldn't fully explain. But unlike Finley, who accepted everything he did as miraculous and special, he could all too well imagine Ackland's teasing, welcoming expression dying when he figured out that Declan was. He couldn't be in the light. He couldn't stand in the Sun King's presence and not be discovered. Whatever that meant. They came for you. His mother's anguished words echoed in his ears. I would like to, but... Here Declan licked his lips, hesitated, but then he forced himself to say the next words to stop the possibility of being more in the king's presence. But I'm not like other people. Declan quickly scooted out from underneath the bed and headed towards the bedroom door. It was better to end this now. This would be the last time he would be alone like this with the Sun King. And though his heart ached, he knew it was for the best.
Could you all imagine that dust bunny traveling underneath the bed between Declan and Ackland, the lone tumbleweed of the inn? Figuring out what to put on the page and what to leave to people's imagination is still something I struggle with. I saw this, dust bunny, and I was like, this is something that would set the scene, but it's not over describing. Like, you don't need to know how the brocade on a couch felt against a character's bare thigh, unless that adds to the chapter, and sometimes it does. But also, let's be honest, we get visions in our heads as we read books about what the characters and the worlds look like. That's something that you don't want broken. But what I've actually done, I have Mathia or Conial, so our house artist, draw the characters for me first before I start writing. I give her all the information about them and some inspirational images, and then Mathia goes to town. But their art helps me remember little quirks about the characters and make them come alive. And also, it stops me from having a different vision in my head than what Mathia will draw later. So that actually helps me. And so I always share these character sketches with the Raythe members before the story starts going. So you have in your heads a vision of sort of like what I see. But for those of you who are just listening and haven't seen those character sheets for Finley, Declan, Ackland, and Raythe, check out the link to them down below. Does that match what you had in your head? Do you actually feel like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I saw? Or like, wait a minute, this isn't right? And do you like to have artwork for your favorite stories, or do you just like to imagine it yourself? Obviously, I'm an artwork kind of gal, but I understand why people want their own versions of the characters. So let me know in the comments, did the character sheets and the characters look like what you visioned? Was it disappointing? Was it? Anyway, please do remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
Chapter 12 Secrets and Lies.
Why is your glass still full, Raythe? Something wrong with the Chelios? Or is something wrong with you?
Helgrim asked him. Nothing at all is wrong with either, Helgrim. Raythe drained his goblet to the dregs and held it out for more. Yet, despite his words, he barely tasted the wine. Instead, he was staring at Finley's ridiculous robes. A certain part of the robes, the part that held that journal with all that very interesting information inside of it. A rift to Illithor, of all things, he thought, and recalled what Lasha had said about her twin's belief that the fabled Kindra city had been found by the Leviathan. So Darkassan is not totally insane. The boy could not have dreamed it in so much detail. Finley was now over by the bar with the general and Snaglack. That damned orc was downing yet another flagon of ale. How many had the orc consumed? Finley and the general were paying for them all. Perhaps the orc had figured out one smart thing in this universe. Pretend to be beaten by a human and get free beer for life. Although, if Declan was what he thought he was, well, taking down an orc or a whole tribe of them wouldn't be hard at all.
Ah, yes, that's the spirit. Drink up!
Helgrim's warm, gravelly voice should have been a welcome distraction from this vexing day, but it wasn't. The second practically overflowing serving of Chelios definitely should have distracted him. But alas, it didn't either.
So there's nothing wrong, then?
Raythe's eyes narrowed as he watched Finley linger by the stairway, gazing up at it, ostensibly waiting for Declan to appear. Only the general's presence was keeping him on the first floor. He must know about his friend's true nature, Raythe thought. Otherwise, why would he be looking up every single bit of information he can find on the Kindreth and the undoubtedly paltry selection at the Athenaeum? It can't really be for a game. That would be absurd. Finley turned towards him, frowning. When he realized that Raythe was staring at him, that frown grew, and he put a protective hand over the inner pocket that held his journal. He'd had Snaglack gather the rest up and put them behind the bar, as if that would stop Raythe if he really wanted to see inside of them. Inside each and every one. I'll know every word. Cool blue eyes regarded him before Finley very deliberately turned his back on Raythe, as if to say Raythe was unimportant to him, as if Raythe's regard was no, never mind, as if Finley was simply above Raythe's interest. The urge to storm over there and turn Finley back towards him. Absurd. Totally absurd. He pursed his lips. At least without a game plan. He has information on Illithor and Declan Wild. I must not allow pique to ruin my interrogation of him later. Instead of answering the dwarf's question, Raythe said, "Tell me about Finley West, Helgrim." Helgrim's amber eyes flickered from him to Finley and back again. The dark dwarf saw much, knew much, but he kept silent about most of it. Raythe was infinitely grateful for that in certain instances. He was almost sure that the dwarf suspected him of having greater ties to the Kindreth than he let on, but Helgrim never said a word. But now he hoped that the usually tight-lipped dwarf would spill about Finley.
Smart. Nearly as smart as you,
Helgrim said as he took a large gulp of his own drink, a bitter dark beer that tasted of ashes in Raythe's opinion, but the dwarves and halflings loved it. Oh well, no accounting for taste.
Really, Helgrim? But he's human. Please tell me you don't carry such prejudice too.
Helgrim's right thick eyebrow lifted. Young. I was going to say young, Raythe corrected. And I actually don't disagree with you about his intelligence. Despite Finley's absurd robes, the even more absurd hat, and the most absurd idea that he would get into Taranth, Raythe didn't actually think Finley was absurd. He was very intelligent. His careful notes and that precise, fine script had told Raythe that. And the fact that Finley had remembered, sketched, and confirmed seeing Illithor, despite the glass scholar's insistence that it was impossible, also showed that Finley was determined. Determined and intelligent. Too bad they'll never let him study magic, because those are the two qualities necessary to become a powerful mage.
And not just book smart either. Clever. Figured out a way to use people's low expectations of humanity and turn it around. Now makes a pretty penny telling us our own stories, better than we've ever done.
Helgrim smacked his lips in satisfaction. Whether that was from the drink or Finley's pecuniary accomplishment or both wasn't clear. Raythe thought it was both.
So there is a game, Raythe blinked, with Zelroth Vex as the big bad.
He dropped his voice as he said the Night King's name, and used Finley's connotation for him. Big bad did fit Vex. He rather thought that Vex would have been amused by such a title. Helgrim nodded.
Vex is a surprise that he'll be launching on his group tomorrow night. He's the real enemy who will only make himself known after the heroes have faced one of his lieutenants. It's quite good. I've even taken a turn playing. Finley created a special character sheet just for me to incorporate my family's unique talents.
Raythe bit his inner cheek at Helgrim's barely concealed pride. Finley truly was intelligent, if he realized that though Helgrim was not too good to own an inn and sell alcohol, he still remembered his family's storied past, a past that the Kindred had wiped out. Helgrim continued.
He doesn't satisfy himself with just books written by others either, though he's consumed many of them, but goes directly to the sources, or as close as he can get.
Such as interviewing you about the Great Falls, Raythe gasped. Helgrim nodded.
And about the Kindred.
The name of Raythe's people floated between them like smoke from Helgrim's pipe. The dark dwarf was stuffing the black bowl with fragrant tobacco. The long, curling stem looked so delicate that it might break off from the weight of all those leaves.
Why did he settle on the Kindred as the villains for his little game?
Raythe tried to sound flippant as he added, Is it because Finley thought he saw Illithor through a Leviathan rift? Helgrim's amber eyes settled on him steadily, so steadily that if Raythe were not used to the cutthroat society of the Kindred, where to reveal oneself was to chance losing everything, he might have squirmed.
Finley has studied us, knows what moves us, what makes us afraid.
Helgrim answered carefully, then added even more carefully,
I'd hoped that news about his spotting Illithor would have died when the glass scholar ignored it, but evidently not.
Raythe ran a finger over the top of his goblet.
Did Neldor see his drawings, the sketches he has in his little books?
Helgrim was staring at him again.
Even if he had, he wouldn't have recognized it. Neldor isn't interested in Illithor, thankfully.
The last was added almost like a prayer. That had Raythe staring hard at the dwarf.
Why, thankfully. Illithor is a poisoned chalice. Helgrim cut him off. All we would need would be fools going in search of its magic and mysteries.
Well, the fools wouldn't make it very far. Raythe tossed his head back. His long hair, dark as chocolate now, as opposed to his true silvery locks, spilled over his shoulders.
No, they wouldn't. But disturbing it at all runs the risk of drawing Vex's attention.
Helgrim's voice was low and gruff.
All we would need is for him to make his way back to the surface. The Arve, bless them, are in no fit state to face him or Kindred battle mages. Even without being depleted by the Leviathan, they would be wiped out by Vex.
The hair on the back of Raythe's neck rose. That was true. Some thought that Vex abandoned Illithor, but Raythe rather thought that he had cocooned it in his powerful magic, so that it and all it contained would be there for his return. He wondered if the Leviathan's activities hadn't tripped some spiderweb of alarms, if they really were rooting around the old city at least. But when he left the Kindred, There had been no rumors whatsoever about Vex returning to the surface.
If Vex were to come, Illithor's magics and mysteries would be useful to have to use against him, Raythe pointed out.
But Helgrim made a low sound of dismissal in the back of his throat as he pressed the last bit of tobacco into the pipe.
Who would be able to master such things? The great ones have drifted away on the Lyran plain or been killed long ago.
Aquilin could do it. I rather think he is unaware of his true strength, Raythe said, even as he thrummed at the idea of getting his own hands on those magics and mysteries. He, most definitely, could wield them to great effect.
Aye, Aquilin is like the kings of old. Alduin, specifically.
Helgrim stuck the end of his pipe between his lips and tipped the bowl so that the tobacco could catch fire from the candle on the table.
Alduin, Vex's old foe, Raythe blinked. Surely you know that they were best friends before they were enemies,
Helgrim asked in between sucks on his pipe. He blew out fragrant tobacco smoke towards the fireplace. Its sweet scent lingered.
Vex? Friends? And having a best friend? I am having a hard time imagining that,
Raythe answered absently, forgetting his own stricture about knowing little to nothing about the Kindred. But it was frightfully easy to talk to Helgrim about these things. But he was also distracted again and not thinking. His gaze was on Finley once more, who had a foot on the bottom step and was gazing up almost beseechingly at the second floor. Raythe would have been right there with him, too, if he'd thought it would do any good. Aquilin had made it perfectly clear that he and Declan were to be left alone. He wasn't worried about Aquilin's safety with Declan, not exactly. If Declan had been someone dangerous, he would have never allowed himself to be caught outside in the sun like that without protection. No, the boy seemed new, inexperienced, completely unaware of himself or the dangers. But if he is unaware of his true nature, then how could he have that clever glamour obscuring his real features? Raythe gritted his teeth. Will Aquilin see through it? And if he does, what will happen? Considering Aquilin's strike first and ask questions later behavior with Volravel Taurus, the young man might not make it out of the bedroom alive. Not that Raythe cared if he did or not. Having one more night elf here is one night elf too many. His inexperience or carelessness could expose me. Fought too hard to get to this place. Will not lose it, Raythe growled internally. But Aquilin's reaction to the young man, now that was concerning. Aquilin almost seemed dumbstruck by Declan, stunned, haunted. It was very odd. He would almost think that the king was under some fateful curse, or in love. Either would be terrible. Again, there would only be one night elf in the Sun King's life, and that was him.
Alduin and Vex were determined to map the Underdark together.
Helgrim was suddenly saying,
Illithor is not just a Vex city, but a combination of both their visions and powers.
Then had Raythe turning his attention back to the dark dwarf almost sharply.
Really?
A nod.
Oh, yes. The merging of their magics and their lives brought such a renaissance for a time among the Underdark. Vex crafted his first blood weapon after Alduin was hurt in battle. He thought his best friend would die. The anguish he experienced at the expected loss of Alduin caused him to create a whole new school of magic. For a moment, Raythe imagined seeing Aquilin fall in battle. His brilliant golden friend laid low, and something in him tightened. But he was hardly like Vex, or Vex was hardly like him. The Night King had no heart to break. So while he could very well see himself creating a blood weapon out of grief and pain, Vex doing the same thing? Vex creating such a weapon with no knowledge or understanding simply because his supposed best friend was going to be lost? Seemed unbelievable. I've never heard this, Raythe said with a jaundiced eye. Are you sure it isn't some kind of fairy tale? The only tales we tell of the Kindred and Vex are dark ones. You know this.
Helgrim chided him and let out a perfectly formed smoke ring.
This is no tale, but the truth.
Well, that's surprising. He found himself unable to say more. It disturbed him to think of Vex as anything other than the beautiful, if terrifying, dark god he was now, to envision him as having friends, of caring for them so deeply that the first blood weapon would be created due to their perceived loss, made Vex seem understandable. That would mean there was a time when he was like Raythe, and maybe Aquin was like Alduin. He frowned.
The two of them created many wonders together. They challenged each other to greater heights than they could ever have accomplished on their own.
Helgrim sounded wistful. Another smoke ring headed towards the fire.
So, what made them fall out? Raythe asked.
Lies. Helgrim's voice was gruff. Raythe stiffened as his own lies seemed very close at that moment.
Secrets and lies.
Raythe swallowed. His eyes darted to the stairs. If Declan was a night elf, and Aquilin figured it out, and what? The king was safe. If there was the least bit of danger, he would know and be up there in a thrice. No, what he was afraid of was that if Aquilin discovered one Kindreth in his kingdom, so innocently disguised, he might look for more. Secrets and lies. The words whispered through Raythe's mind. He drained another glass of Chelios. If Aquilin wasn't down in another few moments, he would be going up there. He had to know what was going on. And if Aquilin hadn't discovered any secret Declan might or might not have, Raythe would make sure he never would. If the boy couldn't keep himself hidden, then Raythe would hide him forever. He glared at the empty goblet. The war was over. His days of having to kill were supposed to be behind him, for a time at least. And now he might have to kill Declan Wild. Damn it all.
No need to give that glassware such a look, Raythe,
Helgrim laughed, and filled his empty goblet up again. Raythe gave him a tight smile. Finley isn't the only human who makes himself at home in the dawn. The other one, Declan, is it? The one that Aquilin is taking care of. What can you tell me about him? Another sip of beer and puff on his pipe were the only responses for some time from Helgrim before the dark dwarf answered,
He is a good bartender.
Raythe let out a sharp laugh. Ha! A good bartender. That is all you have to say about him.
What else would I say? That is what I hired him for, Helgrim answered stonily.
At least will you tell me if he is intelligent like Finley? I know he's strong, as the general told Aquil and I all about this fight with the orcs, unless that was an exaggeration, or Snaglek actually figured out that ingratiating himself with humans would give him free beer and food for life. Raythe said with a sigh as he saw the general buy the orc a whole roast chicken for himself.
Declan keeps the peace, as any good bartender should.
Helgrim answered in a clipped tone. What is going on here? Why is Helgrim being so cagey? Raythe wondered as he studied the suddenly taciturn dwarf. It's almost as if... Does Helgrim know what Declan is? No, he wouldn't shield a Kindreth from the Empire, considering what our people did to his. Well, if he thought he had a night elf under his roof, he'd draw and quarter them himself. Raythe felt the magical approach of their king before the door to the bedroom was opened. His head turned. His chest felt tight. He saw Finley jump up and down like a popcorn kernel in hot oil as Declan and Aquilin appeared at the top of the stairs. Declan looked completely well again, and he was disturbingly lovely. Black hair, green eyes, and skin as pale as the moon. There were many in the Kindreth with skin that was pearlescent white, and some with skin as dark as midnight, and everything in between, all beautiful, all alluring, all dangerous. But there is something about him. I can't put my finger on it, but he does remind me of someone. Strange. Can't place it. Raythe's eyes darted to his king. Aquilin was gazing at Declan's back. There was such a look of longing on his face that Raythe nearly jerked away from it. His heart thundered in his chest. Aquilin hadn't discovered Declan was a Kindreth, thankfully, but his increased interest in the young man would make Raythe's determination to cause him to disappear that much harder. I really must find Aquilin a love interest. A lot of love interests. Anything to keep his attention away from Declan Wild.
Now, that I did not foresee,
Helgrim muttered, having seen the king's regard for Declan just as clearly as he had, evidently.
But I suppose...
You suppose what? That the king will take up with a bartender? Raythe hissed his displeasure. Helgrim turned that steady stare upon him for the third time. Rayliff's reaction was ridiculous. Aquilin could take up with anyone and everyone he wanted, from bartender to military leader and all in between. He was king. They were all his subjects. None were beyond his reach. And it wasn't like Rayliff to judge people on their professions. Helgrim knew that. So his reaction was nonsensical in the dwarf's eyes. Unless Helgrim guessed why he might not want the king to truly take an interest in Declan Wild. He would never help a night elf, so Helgrim can't possibly know what Declan is. Aquilin had stopped at the bottom of the stairs, tracking Declan as the young man embraced Finley. Finley clung to him. He ran his hands up and down Declan's shoulders, seeking any hurts. Declan gave Finley a tender smile that no Kindreth would ever be caught dead giving. Such open affection would mark Finley as someone who could be used against Declan. Rayliff's eyes narrowed. Finley already interested him, so getting nearer to the boy wouldn't be a problem, especially if it gave him power over Declan. The general also fussed over Declan, who endured it all with good humor, while Aquilin looked on happily. It was clear that Aquilin was touched by how much Declan was loved, very loved. That was such a strange thing if he really were a Kindreth. Aquilin had taken to Rayliff, but Rayliff prided himself on being personable, far different than the rest of his kin, who would rather stab someone than smile at them. Declan evidently had found a way around his Kindreth instincts to keep himself to himself and had earned their love. Finally, Declan eased away from the loving touches and vaulted the bar. He immediately started to serve the customers as if he hadn't been overcome by the sun. He didn't give the king one backward glance either. That was the smartest decision he'd made that day in Rayliff's mind. Aquilin finally turned towards him and Helgrim, only reluctantly withdrawing his attention from Declan. He smiled broadly, though, when he did finally catch sight of them and headed towards their table. Rayliff was amused, as always, by how the people at the tables tried to rise and then bow to the Sun King. But Aquilin smiled and made a gesture that they should remain where they were. The king gracefully made his way past the packed house to their table. It was only when Declan was certain that Aquilin's back was turned that he looked over at the king. His eyes showed nothing of what he felt. Helgrim had already lifted a hand to the young man to bring them food and drink. Declan nodded his understanding. He showed no interest in Rayliff. Clearly, he didn't recognize Rayliff as anything other than what he presented himself to be, the RFA best friend of the Sun King. That's good. Foolish, but definitely good for me. When Aquilin reached their table, both he and Helgrim rose. They were Aquilin's friends, but he was their king. Aquilin pressed a hand on both their shoulders and eased them back down. Sit, my friends, please sit, for I intend to do so. Aquilin gracefully lowered himself into one of the chairs with a moan of pleasure. Good to be off my feet. Is that dust on your front? Rayliff frowned as he reached over and brushed the offending material off the Sun King's white shirt. Aquilin had taken off his heavy, hot breastplate, too, and left it up above, or so it seemed. What had he and Declan been doing upstairs? It couldn't have been much. The boy was sunsick. He wouldn't have been up to doing anything at all. Oh, yes, I suppose it is. Aquilin glanced unconcernedly down at his soiled shift. Declan lost his knife. Knife? Rayliff's eyebrows rose. Yes, he was having a nightmare. Didn't know where he was when he woke. Maybe he didn't know who he was. Are you trying to say he pulled a knife on you, my king? Rayliff was rigid in his chair. It was nothing. Declan would never hurt you, Helgrim said firmly. Whenever he speaks of the war, and it isn't often, he speaks of you, King Aquilin. How you arrived and killed the creatures that had slaughtered his adopted parents and everyone else he cared for, except for Finley and Gemma. King Aquilin's blue eyes grew dark. He thinks I did enough. He thinks I didn't have to come to save anyone. You didn't, Rayliff reminded him firmly. But if he's supposedly grateful to you, then why did he pull a knife? He will regret doing that. You know that he couldn't hurt me, Aquilin reminded him with a wave of his hand. But that was only true if Declan had been human. But he was not. It was a kitchen knife. One with a broken point, of all things. I believe it's the one he had on the day the Leviathan came, Aquilin murmured. Rayliff saw Helgrim stiffen at the description of the knife. It was hardly prepossessing, so why was Helgrim reacting in this way? What is it, Helgrim? Aquilin had noticed it too. Is it? Am I right? Does he keep it with him out of fear that the Leviathan might come back and harm him and those he cares for? Aquilin's blue eyes were huge. He had one hand clenched in front of his chest. Raythe had never seen him so passionate about anyone like this before.
I think it may be the very weapon, Helgrim finally said, but you mustn't worry that Declan lives his life in fear. The boy is quite the opposite. Takes down orcs, goblins, the whole bunch. Fearless, I would call him.
Now you speak about Declan, Raythe thought darkly. Good. Answer all the king's questions and mine too. Aquilin smiled. The general did tell us this rather remarkable story about Declan fighting 6 orcs.
It happened. It cost me a pretty penny in carpentry to fix all the tables, chairs, and the door that he destroyed in the process. But it was worth it, Helgrim chortled. Now the orcs behave themselves, and I could retire and Snaglack Spartab alone.
So he does not live in fear. Aquilin looked hopeful.
No, not in the least.
Helgrim patted the king's nearest forearm.
So put your heart at ease, King Aquilin. Declan Wild is not afraid.
Put your heart? No. Aquilin's heart is secure in his chest, Raythe thought. It is not in that bartender's hands. And yet, Raythe wondered if that was simply a comforting lie he was telling himself.
We heard a lot more about the Night King, Zelroth Vex, in this chapter from Raythe and Helgrim's point of views. The members, when they read this, were immediately intrigued about him. The moment they heard about Vex, they were sure, and they demanded, that Vex show up in this story. And I was like, oh yeah, he's coming. Because I knew he was going to be tragic. I knew he was going to be hot. I knew he was going to be dangerous and powerful and godlike. And I had a feeling that I was going to fall in love with him, and hopefully others will too. And that's definitely been the case. But just know something important for those of you Finley Raythe lovers out there. Raythe is also a night elf, and he's Vex's nephew, remember? So he too has a tragic, hot, powerful thing going on, especially as his secrets are in danger of spilling out. What do you think would happen if and when Raythe and Vex meet, considering all we know so far? What's going to happen there? Explosive? Good? Bad? Oh goodness, don't know. Again, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. This interaction has been so much fun. I know everyone's like, it's a parasocial relationship, but I'll be honest with you guys, this to me is like sitting around with my friends, talking about my favorite story, wanting to know what they think, sort of picturing what's going to happen later. It's been a blast. So thank you so much.